All right, friends and neighbors, let's wrap up this wonderful topic, access control lists. Now, just remember where we came from, right? We had been talking about standard and extended examples. And in the standard case, we're usually testing on source IP address information. And so we've got things like access 3 here created. And so we've denied one host. We've allowed a particular portion of a network, and then we've applied it to an interface and a direction. And then there's an example of an extended access list. And remember that extended access lists usually do a source and destination testing, and then we have lots more options associated with extended access lists, but they're applied in the same way. Now, when we do things like this, when we apply them to interfaces, we've taken one of those treatment options and we've said we're going to decide to filter traffic, and that's a key word here. Well, what do we know about filtering? Well, it's allowing or disallowing traffic based on a set of rules, and those rules can vary, right? We've talked about source and destination IP addresses, source and destination ports. We've talked about applications. We're going to talk about a couple of other ideas here. But that's the set of rules that you're going to use, and that's how we decide whether or not we're going to permit or deny based on the keyword. Now, filters can be applied at different layers, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but we're really considering, what's our match criteria? What is it that we're worried about? And then we're going to apply that filter at that layer or that application. And then, of course, we know we've got an allow or deny or permit or deny keyword in addition to the direction on the interface. Now, filtering, the idea of filtering, we use it a lot here in access control lists, but of course we can extend this idea to firewalls, which are just beefy versions of access control lists, although access control lists can be pretty doggone powerful as well. And a lot of times a firewall isn't an appliance. We know what we can use these filter rules or these filter lists for, right? We can identify, first thing we're going to do is identify the packets, and then we decide what we're going to do about it. It can be queuing, it can be rate limiting, it can be quality of service, it can be network address translation, dynamic access control. That's kind of fun. We'll talk about that later on, but just for right now, we say, well, we've got an access list, and upon successful authentication, then the person's or the IP address or whatever the criteria is allowed. So lots and lots of things that we can do once we've identified our filter rules. But remember, it's not just about permitting or denying traffic on an interface. Now, when we talk about different layers, a lot of times we'll talk about, things at layer 2, which is switching, and layer 3, which is routing, and layer 4, which is ports and the transport layer. Well, so in access control lists, layer 2 is pretty straightforward. We are mostly talking about just straight up MAC addresses. And the nice thing about that is that it is a very clear point of entry. But the minute you change a NIC, the minute you change or you have a software change to a MAC address, and yes, you can actually change your MAC address in software, then all of a sudden the access list that you're using to control traffic or to decide some treatment for the traffic is now gone. So MAC addresses can be very, very tough to limit as far as, or at least very tough to manage, very tough to keep up with when you're dealing with traffic. And that's why a lot of times we sort of push that up to the other layers. Now, of course, the standard access list, a lot of times we think of those as being layer 3 access lists. And that's mostly because we're testing on source criteria. And the nice thing is that we can control specific or access from nodes to specific sites. And usually what we do is when we're close to our hosts, we want to let them do a lot of stuff. But when you're close to a target destination, you really bring down what you're trying to control. So for example, I want my hosts or things that are far away from the target to be able to go to the web, to be able to go to printers, to be able to do file service, games, voice over IP, all my other services. But when we get to the server, let's say we're talking about a web server, the only thing that I want there is something very specific, and that's port 80 or port 8080 or port 443 traffic. Now, extended ACLs, we have a lot more specificity that we can use there. Clearly, we've talked about this before. The only problem is that sometimes when we pick a particular port, we call it broad brush. And what that means is that if you kill off port 80 or port 25, then you've killed off all of port 25. And then it becomes a battle to see which ones you want to allow, which ones you don't. And so a lot of times we want to combine these filters at different layers to give us really the match criteria that we want. But each one of these layers or each one of these approaches has some strengths and some weaknesses. We are spending our time with standard and extended ACLs, but there are lots more techniques that we can use to control or manage traffic. And here's a partial list of some of those. So there's a dynamic ACL. That's the one that I mentioned earlier, right? You block the transmissions until there's a successful login, and then all of a sudden that transmission is allowed. Now, an architecture that's similar to this is 802.1x. We have reflexive access lists. They allow outbound traffic and limit inbound traffic unless it was initiated from inside. So if you sort of think of network address translation, this is how I sort of remember reflexive. Network address translation allows any outbound traffic. Any inside source can send stuff to the outside. But there are extreme limits placed on what can come back through a NAT box, and it's a similar idea here. Time-based, just like it sounds, limited to a particular day or days, hours of the day, ranges of time, but you want to make sure that your timestamps are pretty doggone accurate. So network time protocol is a good thing to remember in that case. Now, context-based, that's a little bit different. Context-based is really interested in something that we call state. So we're going to talk a little bit about state here in a minute, but it creates temporary passage based on state. And so the idea is that we're watching a connection, we saw it spin up, so we're going to allow this traffic, but the minute that traffic has a tear down, or the minute we disconnect from that flow, then I'm going to block that traffic unless I see a successful instantiation of another flow from a valid IP address or source. The extra piece that's there's a Cisco command called IP inspect that's used to discover and manage the state information. Now there's lots more of these, and most of these on this page are pretty advanced, and they're a part of lots and lots of deployments, but they're sort of the next level stuff, and they require the use of extended access lists that have been named in a lot of cases. Now, wait a minute. State. What is this state of which you speak? Okay. So state is just your condition, your state of being. You've probably heard that. My goodness, what happened here? What a state this is? What's your status? All of those things. That gets you the idea of what state is. So for a connection, there are lots of things that we would use to define a connection. When it started, what started it, who started it, which direction are the packets flowing in, how long has this been going on, what are the source and destination IP address, source and destination ports involved here, sequence numbers. All of these things constitute state. And so together, we can sort of develop a picture of a particular connection by understanding all of these characteristics. Now, if you understand the state, you understand whether or not a flow is valid. So for example, if I see traffic heading in a particular direction, so let's say that I see traffic flowing into my network from a firewall device, and I say, is that traffic supposed to be there? Well, if I understood the state of the connections that were established from inside, I might be able to identify whether or not that flow of packets belonged to one of those other connections. That would be me understanding the state of the connections. If they don't belong with one of those other connections, then I can disallow that traffic, even though it kind of looks like it might be valid. Now, routers or firewalls that have the ability to look at state information can maintain a whole bunch of these pictures of state for a whole bunch of connections or flows. Now, remember when we're dealing with filter lists or filtering rules, access control lists, there are a couple things that we want to consider here. First of all, when you're building a rule, you want to make sure that you understand what the target or the match criteria is that you're really worried about. Are you worried about a particular host, a subnet that host is on, the network itself, the entire class full network? Are we talking about aggregated spaces? Are we talking about particular applications? Where are they going? Where are they coming from? So there's a lot of things. You want to really nail down what your match criteria is supposed to be. Be very wary of everything statements. Remember that there's an implicit deny all at the end of every access control list. And so you have to permit whatever you want through. And a lot of folks will panic and say, well, I'll just permit everything, or I'll permit everything going to web services or something like that. And that can be really, really dangerous when you start getting into actually trying to control traffic or prevent the bad guys from getting in. We'll spend a little bit of time on this here in a minute, but filter rules can be applied in the outbound and on the inbound directions. And every interface has an inbound and an outbound, and networks have inbound and outbound. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but you just have to sort of be aware of where the match criteria is going to appear. Now, traffic is compared top down. So when you have a filter list and you say, well, I want to control traffic and I'm going to put the filter rules in this particular order. Now, let's say, for example, I want to allow a particular host to get to the web and only the web. So I put a deny statement in. I say deny 192.168.1.1 and then permit 192.168.1.1 as long as it's going to port 80. Well, 192.168.1.1 isn't going anywhere because you put the deny first. You got to flop those around. So you got to make sure that you get your rules order or rules in the right order so that your match happens the way that you want it to. Now, historically, we used to say that you want to be careful of your performance of your devices. If you put your rules in the wrong order, then you may be forcing a whole bunch of rules to be tested before you get down to the one that matches. So for example, let's say that you're allowing all of your nodes to go to the web. And then you have a whole bunch of things that you deny. Let's say you have 100 deny statements out there. If the web match statement is all the way at the bottom, then you've matched all of those other ones. You've required a test of all of the other ones until you get to this valid one, and then you let it go. Well, it'd be far more efficient to put that match at the top or closer to the top. Now, if you've got a big giant machine with lots and lots of memory, maybe it's not a big deal. If you don't have a lot of traffic, you don't have a lot of rules, not a big deal, but it's just something to consider. Okay, so let's talk about directions and interfaces. So in this particular diagram, we've got an our network and we've got a their network. And let's consider that we want to allow traffic from our network to their network. Well, if we follow the pathway, right, every interface has an inbound and an outbound direction. So we've got router number 1 and router number 2 here. And let's say that we control both of those. Well, router number 1, if we were trying to control traffic and I was trying to make sure that the traffic was allowed in a particular direction, then I could say on router number 1, this traffic is allowed into interface F0/0. Or I could say out of interface F0/1. Or I could say into on router number 2, F0/1, and on router number 2 I could say out of F0/0. All those would be the same. Now that's traffic flowing in a particular direction from the perspective of the interfaces. So now let's say that I was also allowing traffic from their network to our network, and I was looking at router number 1. If I wanted to allow my traffic out, I would say it's okay for my source IP addresses to go into interface F0/0. And it's okay for their IP addresses to come out of interface F0/0 as well. So we have to be aware of that. Now, here's the tricky part. Sometimes people think in terms of the network. I want stuff to be allowed to go out of my network. Well, if I'm going out of my network, that's into F0/0 on router number 1 and out of interface F0/1 on router 1. See the difference there? So out of my network can be into an interface. Into my network can be out of an interface. You just have to be aware of that. But as long as you stick to the rule of considering traffic flowing into or out of an interface, you should be okay. And on a last note here, we draw these diagrams all the time with just 2 interfaces, but remember that a router can have many, many, many interfaces, and we have to really think about where traffic is flowing, where it's going, how many different services we have, and those kinds of things. So this brings us to firewalls. Now, a lot of times when we think about firewalls, we think about different devices. I went out and bought a firewall, but sometimes it's a matter of just turning on firewalling capability. or adding some additional rules. Now, it's often that we think about firewalls as going a little bit beyond ACLs. Now, we already know that ACLs are very powerful, or can be. Now, a traditional firewall, if we start from the bottom and when we start talking about firewalls, we're going to assume that the firewall is what we call stateful, meaning that it understands all of those characteristics of our transmissions that we talked about earlier. A proxy firewall acts on behalf of the clients. So we have a couple of examples there. Sometimes we have a VPN proxy, sometimes we have a web proxy. So if you want to protect all your clients from potentially malicious web traffic, then you would have all of the web traffic go to the web proxy, a web firewall, and then all of the incoming answers would come back through that firewall before they went to the hosts. A more advanced form of firewall might actually integrate with an IDS or an IPS so that they can actually take a look at what we call signatures for various security threats. Whether you're talking about ACLs or firewalls, your ability to understand traffic is really, really important, right? You're going to build rules that control the traffic. And if you don't understand it, then you're going to make mistakes in your firewalling. You're going to block something you weren't supposed to, or you're going to let something in that you weren't supposed to. So a lot of times during configuration, we start very simple and then we start to develop more complex rules. But as a key idea here, you better be looking at the applications, the ports, the users, and everything that people are doing on a regular basis before you start shutting things off. Now, when we start actually applying things, sometimes we start with a deny all or a permit all, depending on your approach and depending on whether or not you're sandboxing something or whether or not you're actually running it on production. Usually you wouldn't want to start configuring a firewall while it's in production. But then you develop your list of applications and then you start permitting all of those through. But then, of course, you have to have an in-depth understanding of the network operations. A router or a firewall appliance placed in a particular location in the network has impact on the traffic around it, right? But if you place that router someplace else, the firewall rules are probably going to have to change. So be aware of that. Remember, ACLs and firewalls are not foolproof, right? Attackers can change address to mimic your machines, so that's called spoofing. So anytime somebody's trying to look like somebody else or something else, that's called spoofing, and IP addresses are the easiest thing to spoof. So if you're just testing on IP addresses and somebody changes it, well, there you go. If you build your firewalls or your security around something that's tied to hardware, so for example in wireless networks, or if you're doing Mac-based ACLs, all of that stuff is tied to hardware of the device. Well, of course, the minute you have theft of a valid node, now they're right by your security. So what the bad guys do, the strategy is to try to figure out what is getting through and then develop exploits using that particular doorway. So defenses against bad guys and defenses against, some forms of reconnaissance. We're watching for spoofed IP addresses, spoofed MAC addresses, changing like that. Alarms that indicate unusual conditions. IP addresses appearing where they're not supposed to be. Traffic at different hours of the day. Anything that's unusual. But this, of course, means that you have to understand what's usual or what's normal. And that is baselining. Now, before we close out today, let's do a couple of match criteria examples. Sometimes that's the most challenging thing about ACLs to understand. So first thing that we're going to do is remember how this works, right? We're going to determine what is being matched, and then we decide what we're going to do about it. Now, these are just criteria matched, so we're not going to decide what to do with it until, we get our feet wet a little bit here. But let's say that I am worried about a particular subnet, and the subnet that I'm concerned about here is 192.168.1.64. But then I go ahead and use a wildcard mask of 0.0.0.255. So in order to understand the match criteria here, I have to expand the octets, right? So in order to do that, we have to expand the last octet. And so we know that zeros are what we care about. So I haven't expanded all of the octets here, just the last one. And we can see that if we expand the last octet of 64, it looks like that. We've got 01, 000000. But in the wildcard underneath there, I've got all ones, which means I don't care about any of those bits. So the only things that I care about are the first three, and the last byte can be anything it wants to. So it doesn't matter that I put a 64 there. It's completely ignoring that particular match criteria because of the wildcard mask. So what that means is that anything from 1.0 to 1.255 would pass through that, and that's not the area that I was concerned about. So in order to fix this, I have to determine which bits I actually care about. And if I put in 64 as the match criteria, I want to make sure that the wildcard mask is also paying attention to my 64. So the way that you do that is you say, well, I'm going to change the wildcard mask to 0.0.0.63. And what 63 does is it puts 2 zeros in the front of that last octet, meaning that it pays attention to the first 2 bits of my last octet in my match criteria. So now I care about what's in the first 2 bits of the last byte, but not the next 6. So they can be anything. So all addresses must begin with 0, 1 because that's my match criteria. And the range would then be 0, 1 followed by 6 zeros, or 0, 1 followed by 6 ones, or anything in that range, or 192, 168, 1.64 to 127. Now what if I change the match criteria? What if I change it from 1.64 to 1.128? Now if we expand the last octet, of course it looks like that. And my match criteria just changed. I care about the same bits, meaning the first 2 bits of that last octet. But now the first 2 bits must be a 1, 0 instead of a 0, 1. So the range is now 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, to 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Sorry, I had to fix my ones. Or another way to say this is, of course, 192, 168, 1.128 to 191. So that's the range, 128 plus 63. So anything in there is fine, but as long as that first 2 bits is 1, 0. Now, how crazy can wildcard masks be? Well, let's say that if we did something totally random, right? What if we said, well, my match criteria is 1.53 and my mask is, oh, I don't know, 0.00194. Right? It's a crazy mask. You probably never do it, but it shows how this whole thing works. So if I break out my last octet, I've got 53 there, and then the wildcard mask would be 11000010. Okay? So what this is saying is that the only bits that I care about are number 2 through 6 and the 8th bit. Those are the only ones that I care about. All the rest could be 0 or 1. I don't care. But as long as the match criteria. Well, what is the match criteria? Well, we get the match criteria, of course, from the last octet of the address. And so it must be the case that the 2nd through the 6th bit and the last bit are 1101, and then the last bit is a 1. So that has to be the case. And so what that means is that we get this list of IP addresses that are matched by this. And they include, some of the patterns that I put there at the bottom, or that list of IP addresses. So you can see it gets a little crazy, but if you understand this example, you understand how wildcard matches work and how the match criteria works. Let's do one with direction. So let's say that I've got access list 22 denies a particular IP address, and then we apply that particular access list, we're using the access group command, to g.0/3 in the in direction. Well, what's the impact of using this access list and then applying it in the way that we have? Well, in this case, everything going into that interface is going to be denied because at the end of the access list is an implicit deny all. So we got to remember that. And just as a side note, that syntax that I used here is the same as saying 9.9.9.9 with all zeros in the mask because that means I pay attention to everything, or just the host keyword. Now let's say that I change it a little bit and I say access list 22 permit, and then I'm permitting that entire address space in the class C size. And then I apply it in the same way to the same interface and in the same direction. And that means that it allows everything from 9.9.9.0 to 255 going into that particular interface. And of course, there's no other test. All right, let's do one more because we want to really get this direction thing nailed down. Here we've got a topology with a couple of networks here. We've got the 1 network on the left and the 2 network on the right. And I've got this access list that permits 1.1. And I'm going to apply that to interface G0/0 in the in direction. And then I'm going to ping from 1.1 to 2.1 and see if it works. And in this case, 1.1 to 2.1 would work, but if I turned right around and pinged from 192.168.1.2 to 2.1, that would not work. And the reason that it doesn't work is because of the implicit denial. I did not explicitly say to permit 192.168.1.2. And so it's not allowed. And so that transmission does not go through. All right, let's change it up a little bit. We're going to take that same exact access list, but this time we're going to apply it to G0/1 in the out direction. And it turns out that this works for the exact same reason. The test is on the source IP address, and 192.168.1.1 would appear in the source IP address going in that particular direction, and so this would pass. 1.2 would fail. Now let's go the other way. Interface G.00, now we're going to apply IP access group 1 in the out direction. And this fails because the match criteria is never met. 192.168.1.1 will never be the source IP address of traffic coming out of G0/0, and so that will fail. So the interface and direction is really, really important to understand. Well, that's it, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This time we covered some important ideas related to ACLs and did some examples. Like and subscribe if I helped. And until next time, may your packets always reach their destinations.